Hey folks, I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and well, let's talk about the Dunu Falcon Ultra. So this is a follow-up to the Dunu Falcon Pro, which you might recall I reviewed about 2 years ago. And okay, well, what's different about this one? A couple of things, okay? For starters, the price is up a little bit. The original Falcon Pro was, I believe, $220. Now the Falcon Ultra is $240. It's still a dynamic driver earphone, but there are a couple of things that are changed. So one of them is this color, which I hope is coming across as blue here on my little makeshift studio rig here. But yeah, this is a new blue color. They've anodized it. It's kind of a neat trick. We'll get into talking a little bit more about the physicality in a little bit. But that's different. And then as well, they've also changed up the tuning. And as far as I can tell, or from what I understand from their website, they've actually invented an entirely new driver to put in this thing. I think there was some controversy around the original driver, some other manufacturer apparently using their driver, and so they had to differentiate themselves, and so they've now come out with a new IM called the Ultra. And well, let's talk about these differences more in depth. Okay, the physicality stuff. Okay, it's apart from the coloring, it is the same shell shape and design that we got with the original Falcon. It's a little bit svelter and thinner, sort of width-wise, than your average dynamic driver IM, and that actually has some benefits, I think, for fit stability. Here, let me do a little bit of a fit demonstration for you real quickly, so you can take a look at what that looks like inside my ear. I hope I'm properly in frame. But yeah, generally fit stability I find on this shell, and this is, I believe, the same case that I had. Ooh, little sneak peek there. The fit stability is a little bit improved here versus your average dynamic driver IM. But I would say that comfort maybe takes a little bit of a hit, and part of that might be because of the way this thing's manufactured. As like a lot of IMs, you can see it's kind of two different pieces. There's the outer shell and the inner shell, and here where they meet, to the finger, it doesn't really feel rough or anything like that, but as I wear this thing in my ear, after about 30 or 40 minutes or something, I start to feel this one a little bit. That said, I was able to sleep through a night with these things in my ears, so I don't know, it's not a big issue, but it was definitely notable as I was wearing them. Apart from that, okay, actually there is another notable difference, or at least I think there is. So like I've been mentioning, I'm not in my studio right now, so I don't have access to my library of IMs, but from what I remember, the original Falcon Pro, it isolated less so than your average IM, which is to say, when I put those things in my ear, it sounded more like an open IM than most other IMs out there. Like most IMs isolate pretty strongly. Here with the Falcon Ultra, I would say that the isolation is closer to that of your typical dynamic driver IM, which is to say, it's not like incredible isolation, but it doesn't sound especially open in the same way that the Falcon Pro did. At least, again, to my memory, and that's kind of a notable difference. The other thing, I guess, is this cable, which might, in fact, be the same cable that they used on the other one, on the Falcon Pro, just with a darker color. And they are, of course, still using Dunu's patented, I don't know what they call it, quad lock or something like that. So you can swap out for different terminations if you want. I believe it comes with 4.4 millimeter in the box. And well, I'm typically using 3.5, so that's what I've got here. This isn't the same mechanism that you see on their higher end IMs, but I don't know, honestly, like this is a pretty nice little, if you're going to have a swappable termination, this one doesn't really add any extra bulk versus your average right angle connector, so I'm pretty okay with this. Now, the cable itself is, I would say, maybe a little bit on the stiff side, a little bit kinky. I don't know how much of this is going to come across here on my limited table space, but trust me a little bit. It's not my favorite cable, but it's also not an awful cable. It's a cable I'd probably leave on this IM, to be honest, but I don't know, if I was dailying this, maybe I would be tempted to swap it out with something a little bit softer and more pliable. But I don't know. It generally is a pretty decent little cable. I think aesthetically it matches it well. It's just, you can see, I don't know, maybe I just need to, I don't have my hair dryer. So what I would normally do is I would hair dryer these ear hooks so that they would be a little bit more compact. But anyway, all right, we're getting a little bit too into the weeds there. Let's talk about the sound here on the Falcon Ultra, which is where there are actually some pretty significant differences. But before I talk about what's different, let me talk about real quickly the original Falcon, the Falcon Pro. It was an IM that was, tuning wise, was a little bit on the polarizing side. It was a little bit warm, a little thick, vocals are pretty recessed. in a way that was pretty obvious, I think, to a lot of people, even people that aren't especially sensitive to vocal recession. That was the tuning of the Falcon Pro. It was a very opinionated tuning. And to be honest, like not really up my alley. But what I did like about the Falcon Pro and why I ended up actually giving it a 4-star review, like I still actually enjoy that earphone, is the bass physicality. And so here with the Falcon Ultra, they've kind of, I think what they're going for is to maintain that bass physicality and then go with a much more normal tuning. And to be honest, I think that they've delivered that. So let me go over here to Squiglink. We can talk a little bit about the tuning, like I was just alluding to. And if you're used to looking at frequency responses, this probably looks pretty ordinary. I would describe this as a tasteful, modest V-shaped sound signature. It's definitely got a pretty hefty emphasis in the bass, as you can see down here. And it's not just a purely sub-bass focus. This bass is rising pretty clean from, 400, 300 hertz. So it's not super isolated, but it is more isolated here than the original Falcon Pro, if you're curious about that. But then up here, up top, this is just where it sounds normal, right? This is your pretty traditional ear gain. The treble, smoothly glides down, and this looks pretty typical. Let me pull up the original, the Falcon Pro graph just for reference. You can see that the bass here was just kind of this big, you could call this boomy, bloaty. It definitely was this in a tonal way, but the technical performance of the bass was still pretty exciting in a way that kept that to be okay for me. But again, this was a polarizing tune, whereas here again with the Falcon Ultra, I think this is a much more traditional tune that most people are going to find inoffensive. It's definitely not a mid-range focus tune. If you're looking for a mid-range focus sound, this is not it, but I don't think anyone's going to find this to be, again, an offensive sound. Now, that bass physicality, did they actually maintain it? Well, to my memory, yeah, I think they did. And I'm saying to my memory because, again, I don't have my original Falcon Pro on hand here with me where I'm at right now. So I'm having to do this by memory a bit, but the bass physicality that we've got here on the Falcon Ultra is pretty standout. It's just got this nice sense of weight behind it when it hits, even more so than other IMs that have a similar tune to them. And in fact, I'm actually reviewing the Moondrop Chew 2, and frequency response wise lines up almost exactly with this with this Falcon Ultra. And so it is kind of an interesting demonstration of how FR does not explain everything, because the bass presentation is pretty significantly different, in my opinion, to the favor here of the Falcon Ultra. And now maybe you would expect that because this is a $240 IM versus a $200 IM, but it is nonetheless interesting to me, and I think nonetheless kind of a standout attribute of the Falcon Ultra. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted to mention. I mean, I think that's pretty much it. So yeah, out of 5 stars, what, the Falcon Ultra, I think it's maybe a little bit overpriced at $240, but I still dig the sound. Again, not a mid-range focus tune like I typically would prefer, like maximally, but what it does really well, I think it does uniquely well. The bass performance is pretty outstanding. So I'm going to give it a solid 4 stars out of 5. And if you want to check it out, of course, I've got it linked in the description down below. Shout out to Dunu, by the way, for sending this in for review. And while you're down there, if you found this video helpful, you liked it, please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Cheers.